Life is tough, always has been. Evolution has given us a stress response system that is remarkably adapted to coping with many kinds of stressors. And relative to our ancestors, most of us live longer and healthier lives than they did. But in the last century's blink in evolutionary time, our sudden escalation in energy consumption around the world has created stressors that evolution could not anticipate. Our sleep can now ignore the day-night cycle. We travel enormous distances at great speeds with unlimited frequency. Many of us organize our social lives now without villages or extended families to contain us. Our volume of communications has risen exponentially, yet many of us cope with loneliness that was unimaginable a century ago, when it was harder to lose touch with those who cared about us. Our options for addictive stimulations have never been greater. These are just some of the novel forces that have conspired to create modern forms of toxic stress, despite our having access at the same time to more resources than ever before. We are both blessed and cursed by our high-energy living. In this book, I focus on the central but often overlooked role of our stress response systems in our most common and costly illnesses, such as diabetes, heart disease, depression, and obesity. Stress is a hot topic in our culture, but a blind spot in most branches of medicine. Most doctors ignore stress or pay it only lip service. Standards of treatment for diabetes and heart disease promoted by our leading medical organizations hardly offer a whisper about stress as a risk factor or a target for treatment. Yet we know from decades of good neuroscience that severe or persistent stress raises the risks for these common long-lasting illnesses, and toxic stress makes most illnesses harder to treat. We also know that exposure to a lot of adverse experiences in childhood is among the strongest predictors of physical and mental illness in adulthood. What chance do we have to prevent and manage these illnesses if we don't learn to see toxic stress, measure it, and treat it? Long after persuasive mountains of scientific data have made the case for changing our views about stress, many of us persist with our traditional views of how our bodies work. The culture of modern medicine is built around specialty areas. Cardiologists look at the heart, orthopedists fix knees, oncologists treat cancer, for example, with economic investments and turf to protect. The stress response system, as we shall see, respects none of these turf boundaries, and it rules at every level of organization, from genes to cells to tissues to organs to individuals to social groups.